Hey everybody, Ed here with the Digital Digest, and today I wanted to share a comparison between the Samsung Galaxy Note Pro 12.2 on the left and the Microsoft Surface Pro 2 on the right. Now, even though these are both tablets, one a 12.2-inch display, the other a 10.6-inch, and they're close in terms of weight despite the screen size difference, on the left we're looking at a tablet weighing in at 1.6 pounds in change. On the right, roughly 2 pounds. In terms of battery life, 10 hours, 6.5. And of course, that'll vary depending on what you do with them. Operating system, of course, also inherently different. Mobile operating system on the left, complete full Microsoft 8.1 64-bit on the right, and with specifications to match, which I'll be talking about through the course of this review. And even though a lot of people think that you can't compare devices like this, people inherently will, and that's because pricing is similar, functionality in terms of having Wacom digitizer experiences baked into the actual product, it's there. And clearly they do compete with each other, even though many may think that they shouldn't. And it's understandable why. After all, this is a device on the right in the Surface Pro 2 that in many ways has a zero compromise experience for just about everyone who ever wanted an actual Windows tablet. And it's a fantastic product. Anyone that has watched my reviews knows how much I enjoy using this product. On the other hand, you will not be able to find something like the Pro 12.2 on the left, because in the form of Windows, there's nothing really other than what you're looking at here in the Surface Pro form at a 10.6-inch screen size that can even be compared to the tablet on the left. Furthermore, the weight, a little over 1.5 pounds. Again, you're not going to find that in the Windows world. So some people are willing to make that compromise of giving up the almost zero compromise experience outside of the slightly cramped screen. For some users, clearly not all. And 12.2, believe it or not, is a significant difference in the fact that the device loses weight, is thinner, has longer battery life. For some users, will outweigh the performance, the base performance and overall flexibility that a true Windows machine like the Surface Pro 2 offers. So that's why the comparison is even relevant for those of you that can't understand it, don't want to. I think there are more than enough people out there who do respect looking at two devices like this, especially because, as I mentioned, pricing is really close. So $750 for the 32 gig version of the Pro 12.2 over here on the left, $850 for the 64 gig. Keep in mind it does have storage expansion in the form of a micro SD card slot, the same exact way that the Surface Pro 2 on the right does. The Pro 2 starts at $899 for the 64 gig, and well, the sky is the limit if you want to go up to the 512 gig model. But for the purpose of this comparison, we're going to focus on a baseline 64 gig $900 model and a $750 model here. You could even look at it, of course, with the 64 gig if that makes you feel that they are even. But again, I think it's about the price of entry in order to actually get your hands on either of these Pro experiences. So $750 versus $900, or of course, again, you could put the $900 against the $850. So it gets even closer. Now, in terms of what you're getting, the screen real estate I already mentioned, clearly you get a very big advantage with the Note 12.2, and that's because not only do you have a larger screen, but you also have higher resolution. 2560 by 1600 right here, that's much more than you're getting on the 10.6. Also, when it comes to scaling, you may have already noticed all the icons here are touch-friendly, even though we do have Wacom digitizers for both with great pen experiences that are really very different, if that's not obvious by the looks of the pen themselves, because clearly the Surface Pro 2 pen resembles a traditional writing instrument. However, the S Pen is just a stylus that's been essentially baked into the Note lineup, and that's not a bad thing. They offer different experiences. I'll get to that later. But when we talk about the screen here, even though we've got a great screen on the Surface Pro 2, it does not match up to the display on the 12.2. It's just a matter of fact. See them in person. Hopefully the video, when I do a little web browsing and you see one-for-one images that at least should show color accuracy representation, you'll see why the Samsung has a more vibrant screen. Now, that's not necessarily the most important thing to every user, but in this comparison, I think anyone who's willing to compare these and put operating system benefits and compromises aside, clearly the Android option being the compromise if you need this full functionality, then it's really clear that screen size is all you're after, with that benefit of not gaining weight but actually losing it, as I mentioned it earlier. Again, no Windows device is going to give you this sort of experience if you don't require the sort of performance and software capability that a true Windows machine offers, like the Pro 2. So moving beyond the actual screens, because again, even though this one is superior, that's its selling point. It better be, especially if you believe Samsung is actually targeting the Pro 2, which I think they are, even though most people will not compare Android KitKat version 4.4 out of the box to Windows 8.1, or at least I hope they wouldn't, because they're not remotely similar. In the same way, the iPad should not be compared to anything like the Surface Pro 2, but of course people will inherently make that comparison because they're tablets that, if you go for the highest spec iPad, will even approach the Surface Pro 2, or of course be right in line with the levels of the Pro 12.2 on the left. So beyond the screen, let's talk about actual hardware. Both have cameras on the front and back. With the Surface Pro 2, the cameras are frankly garbage compared to what you're getting with the Galaxy product. But you shouldn't really be picking either of these tablets for that reason. It's really a matter of your needs. Some of you will care more about the cameras than others, but this is really all about convenience, pen capability, functionality with software, and meeting your needs for battery life and just overall multitasking, because that's the pitch from both products. As I mentioned, scaling here is definitely weaker, but a lot of people won't care about that. And that's inherent of Android being a touch-based operating system, and Windows really even in 8.1, even though we do have the tile mode, it still is nowhere near what you get with the Android experience for most users because of lack of applications, among many other things for that matter. But back to the desktop, because that's where things are at really for Surface Pro. That's the advantage it clearly has. Not the tablet form, but that you've got a full-blown PC right here in a 2-pound package that now does get pretty good battery life. In terms of processors, Core i5, as I mentioned, configurations vary on the SSD. You can go from anywhere from 64 up to 512. If you move up to the 256 or 512, you take on 8 gigs of RAM from the standard 4 in the base model. The Intel i5 processor is low voltage, but still, it is Haswell and pretty much sets the mark for the industry right now in ultrabook computing. So that's a very good thing. That's why the Surface Pro 2 is basically an unmatched device. I mean, I do personally prefer my Duo 13, but that's because it really marries these two concepts and gives me the larger screen real estate while still giving me even more computing power than this. But I'm not going to go on a tangent about that. That'll be another video altogether. On the other hand, here we've got a mobile class processor, Samsung's very own Exynos 5. There are actually 2 quad-core processors in this tablet, so a total of 8 cores. But of course, it's not really something you're going to compare. They're different forms of architecture, so they are not like products in any way. But in terms of performance, there's no question the A15 chip that does power this, that Samsung has designed, it is a very strong performer. Now, in the Galaxy Note 10.1 2014 edition, there were some software optimization issues. Hopefully, what they've done here will be brought to that tablet as well, because this tablet just works incredibly well across the board. Whether you're using the S Pen, I'll get to the pen functionality soon, don't worry, of both tablets, it just performs. There's very little lag. They have done away with TouchWiz for a Flipboard-based user interface that they're now calling the Magazine UX. This is an overlay over Android, something you need to know since we have already discussed the operating system that you all know and either love or hate that Surface Pro brings to the table. I personally think it's fantastic, 8.1, but not everyone does. Same goes for Android. Not everybody loves that. And Samsung has put their own spin on it. This is not new. TouchWiz, again, now Magazine UX, and it is really just Flipboard. You see it right here. It's baked into the pages, even in terms of this other alternate page that they pre-load onto your home screens for, again, the pro angle that this gives. Business users, I mean, that's who both of these tablets are really designed for. The difference is, are you a business user that really needs zero limitations? And if so, are you okay with the smaller screen? Because I know a lot of business users aren't okay with it, so that's why I keep mentioning it. Here you get the bigger screen, and as long as you know and respect the limitations of what the mobile OS is capable of, then you really aren't going to be sacrificing anything, in fact, except the extra weight and less battery life you'd be getting out of the Pro experience. And that's a fact for users who really don't require more. There are so many people I know that rely solely on their iPad or other tablet of choice for their day-to-day computing. Now, I personally can't do that. I wish I could. But if you are one of those people, then clearly, even though this is one of the most expensive Android tablets ever made, it also, for you, would be one of the best options ever made, especially if note-taking is on your short list, which for both of these it should be. It's part of what makes them great. They both have, by the way, again, Wacom experiences that are basically mirror images of one another, just optimized in different ways for their respective operating systems. So back to the software here. So far, I've been pleased with it. I'm not through a full, complete review of it yet, but I haven't noticed anything bad. Not a tremendous amount of bloatware, actually less than previous generations from Samsung, which is a good thing. A lot of subscription-based services Samsung throws in here beyond their standard applications, and that's because they know it's a media consumption device. Microsoft wants the Surface Pro 2 to also be a media consumption device, but because the application store is limited, that is just right now a hurdle that they are working through. And growth is where that will get better, and the third generation of Surface Pro, I expect even better things. Maybe a redesign, a slimmer version where we can actually have something that looks like this, that is comparable, and actually is virtually the same product, but running Windows. That's really what would be ideal, and that's where I said my Duo 13 kind of accomplishes that with only another half pound beyond the Surface Pro 2. But overall, performance here is, as I've mentioned, very, very good. And the applications that they include, Handcomb Office, basically renders the whole Microsoft Office argument null and void because you do have a legitimate Office experience here. In terms of multitasking, because we know what Windows can do. It's a beast. It can do whatever, especially 8.1. If you don't respect the multitasking that's built in there, you just don't know how to use the operating system, or you're not using a touch device either, haven't experienced it. Here on Android, Samsung does some of the best multitasking in the business. You can see that gesture that's similar on the actual Surface Pro brings up a list of different applications that we can essentially stack up. You can end up setting up 4 different windows with these applications, and that's definitely a nice feature. You can see it sizing right now to the whole screen with that blue window. If I leave it, it will go, and hand holding, as I always mention, they're bringing up the perks. If I then go ahead and bring out S Note, now we've got split screen. If I then brought out music, and you see where I'm going with this. Very simple. And you can just keep going. I can bring that over here. We've got 4 things running at once. But the reality of that is that, as novel as it is, if you really care about multitasking, of course Windows 8 can run circles around it with the hardware that's here. By the way, I didn't mention 3 gigs of RAM as opposed to the 4 at the baseline model. And again, this really isn't about specifications if you're comparing these. It is price point and what you actually can accomplish and need to be able to do. And again, the limitations that are here may outweigh the pros for many, but some really do need that extra space. I know that using basically every Galaxy Note product from inception, personally, this is the best experience because you have the largest overall surface area to write with. And that's one of the best draws for true Galaxy Note fans in general. On the other hand, with Surface Pro 2, you have the ability to tap every piece of software ever designed, essentially, that Wacom is enhanced for, which is just going to kill whatever Android can do now, or even for the foreseeable future for a long, long time. So that makes this a game changer. In the same vein, taking notes on here is a little bit more difficult. Both devices can convert handwriting into text, so that is a wash. Definitely Windows is better suited to do that. But in my opinion, it's really, again, a matter of, do you need this extra screen real estate? Both have Bluetooth, of course, Wi-Fi, dual band functionality, no AC here on the Surface Pro 2. You do have AC functionality on the Galaxy Note 12 2. I mentioned micro SD card slot for storage expansion, Bluetooth 3.0 on both devices, surprisingly, but it's just something that Samsung added to the Note 12 2. You also have a kickstand here with the Surface Pro 2 that doesn't exist here, but you have clearly options in terms of cases, a bevy of them, as well as keyboard docks to really turn this into a full computing option to really take on the keyboard option for the Surface Pro 2. So a lot going on here. I mentioned cameras at the beginning, didn't focus really on it. 720p on the front and back of the Surface Pro 2, 2 megapixels on the front, essentially 8 on the back here. A far more rich suite of software for the camera, no question about it. And that's just because Samsung makes phones and they're giving you the Galaxy experience here, which again is who this also is speaking to, not necessarily in this comparison exactly itself, but in terms of what it represents, in terms of what you can actually do with the product. So the camera experience here is not going to compare to what you get with Samsung. LED flash on the back. Build quality, another thing I want to speak to. I'm going to bring up the browsers and then discuss the pens. I'm going to go into Chrome on each of these. Now, in terms of build quality, there's no question the Surface Pro 2 outclasses the product on the left. There's just no comparison at all. And that's because, it's one of those things where, let's see if I can actually just use my history here. Doesn't look like I can, so I will bring up the regular keyboard and try to time this. But essentially, the experience here for the S Pen and the Pro 2 pen that you're getting is very different in terms of just the hold, the feel. I am a righty, so this is awkward, but nonetheless, let's see if I can time this properly. Here we go, and believe I made contact at the same time. And you can see that the Surface Pro 2 did have an advantage there, no question about it. Somehow I had a mistouch already. And that's another example, by the way, of actually the optimization difference when it comes to using something like the Android tablet on the left for touch. And that's not to say that the touch here is bad. It's very, very good. And there you have almost an identical image, and you can see how much more screen real estate you're getting here. By the way, both tablets are at full brightness for those of you wondering who've made it this far. And it's just a different experience. There's no question about it. And because this weighs less than the Surface Pro 2, really, if you don't require all the computing power on the right-hand side of this review, then it's really obvious why the less expensive tablet-based experience is so attractive. In fact, as overpriced as it may seem, for many users, I think it's going to be a very obvious choice. So it's again just a matter of what you require in your day-to-day needs. What is your daily driver all about? If you can live within the confines of a mobile operating system like KitKat that you're getting out of the box and actually enjoy what Samsung puts together, including the perks, then there's no reason to even look at the Surface Pro 2 unless you really need Windows functionality. And there's no question a lot of users already have laptops or Ultrabooks, and I, myself included, the overlap can get insane. So there's a clear reason why there's an appeal here. Just as with the Surface Pro 2, I mean, it's money well spent. You're getting a device that's clearly going to outlive anything Android or iOS based. I wouldn't even bring iOS into this mix because the functionality just doesn't approach it. You can hook up drives to each of these, clearly far less limitations hooking up USB 3.0 devices with the Surface Pro 2 than with the Galaxy Note. You're going to be relegated to only one type of format with jump drives and hard drives. Here, no limitations. So that's something to keep in mind. Both can clearly use a controller for gaming, but that's not the slant here. It's about professional use. In terms of build quality, I mentioned before, just a brick on the right side. Left side, it's all about keeping things thin, but the build quality is still very sturdy. And the fact that the screen quality is, I would say, substantially better than the Surface Pro 2 because of the extra real estate for multitasking, that's a big thing in the 12.2's favor. In the same vein, the fact that this really can get work done that the Pro can't do just makes the Surface Pro 2 the killer tablet on the market, in my opinion, across the board. But as I've said through the video, it comes down to personal need. The multitasking, I've already shown some of the multi-window. S Pen functionality, this is something the Surface can't do. And this is because the OS is all about quick functionality, right? So you can hit that button and while hovering, and it will bring up, I'll do this on the desktop of the tablet, a home screen, it will bring up, Air Command, which will give you all these quick tools that doesn't exist over here. You can see it actually does function here, the hover, as well as, because this is Wacom. But this is something unique Samsung's created. Some people think this is a gimmick and totally worthless. Others already use it on a day-to-day basis with their Galaxy Note products, so they'll feel right at home. This is tailored for you. That's the idea. On the other hand, Microsoft, not as strong, obviously, in the Windows, handset sales for phones as Android is, not as prevalent, and as a result, they don't have that brand, even though they're working on it. So there's a tie here, to their mobile brand that Microsoft simply lacks for that integration. But this is, again, something that most Surface Pro 2 owners are going to look at as a gimmick. And I don't blame them. I understand why. But it's really tied together well and speaks to what mobile OSs do well, which is get to information very quickly, in many instances more quickly than even this sort of device on the right-hand side. Now, when it comes to artists, there's no question, again, the benefits of the Surface Pro 2 with the Wacom experience, I think, outweigh what's available in the form of Android applications for the S Pen on the left. So that's obvious, and it should be. However, the extra screen real estate when it comes to taking actual notes definitely, in my opinion, goes to the Note 12.2. Until we have Microsoft making a Pro in this class or screen size, maybe even a 13-inch, that's what I'd really like to see, to separate it from the 10.6-inch display we have on the right. That's where I think things need to go for a true competitor, or something essentially to kill this, make this a conversation that we won't be having in the future. And that's because the Surface Pro 2 really is the king of tablets, as I've mentioned through the video. It just can't do a lot of the things this can in terms of battery life and, again, physical screen real estate as well as resolution. The scaling is, as I mentioned, another really big thing. So it's all about your approach to computing on a day-to-day basis. Do you care that there's a kickstand here? You probably shouldn't, but it is a great thing to have on day-to-day use. It's one of my favorite elements of the Surface Pro experience. And the second generation only got better with that extension. But that was really the only benefit in actual build quality beyond the battery life being extended. Everything else stayed the same with the Pro 2. Here we're getting a fresh product that, yeah, software is not going to be updated too far. Samsung's inherently always going to do that because they want to make a new product. After all, their slogan is the next big thing. And I'm not trying to be cute. It's the reality of the business. And Microsoft, even though they're not saying that, well, they'll be making the next big thing themselves as well. And hopefully that next big thing is in the same class as this and even gets close to the same weight, because then we've got a dream device, in my opinion. So do you want to take on the overall surface area of this device? That's one big question. Do you care about the fact that you don't have all the flexibility you do with a Windows machine? I personally think the scaling here is perfect. Here it's a compromise. But then again, from a software standpoint, Android in itself is a complete compromise for a true business professional, even with the entire software suite that's been provided here. So, hopefully I've laid it all out. I know I didn't demo everything, but anyone that follows my channel knows that this is part podcast and part just overview and demonstration. I'm going to go to another website, though. Go over to ESPN. I'll try to use the pens again for the best, most accurate test possible. You can see the hover going into effect immediately, and here we go. And of course, both have palm rejection. See, and here's a perfect example. We're getting a mobile site on the right-hand side, full site. And this is one of the reasons I'll always recommend a Surface Pro 2 to anyone who really wants a true computing experience, as opposed to what you're getting. Of course, I can't pinch to zoom on this mobile site. With anything that's Android or mobile OS driven, for that matter. But still, the compromise that this represents is a very good one. The best we've ever seen for something trying to blur the line between traditional computing or laptop experience, now Ultrabook standard, because netbooks obviously done away with. Ultrabook is the new netbook in reality, even though Now we've got a whole new class of, wow, I'm just noticing this. That is not good. But basketball aside, not that my Knicks are any good at this point. I'm not going to make myself ill. Sticking to the review, that just totally threw me. Some breaking news there for a basketball fan. The point is that it's, again, all boiling down here to, do you want the extra screen real estate? If you do, you're not going to find it in a Windows compromise that's going to offer this battery life. It just isn't going to happen. But overall, both devices are fantastic in my use so far. It's just clear that you have to be willing to live with the limitations, but you do get good things in that compromise, like the battery life, screen real estate, and resolution. But when it comes to Wi-Fi performance, both are really solid, even though you saw a little speedier here on the Surface Pro 2. I think that has to do a lot more to do with operating system, which again speaks to what you give up by coming over to Android, because they are both obviously in the same position in my network area here now, and I'm nowhere near my router. They're both running on the 5 gigahertz band, so no 2.4, which isn't the best for range necessarily unless you've got extenders set up, but in terms of speed, raw output, as good as you're going to do without AC performance right now. And both just run exceptionally well. I like them both, and I can see why it's a difficult decision for many users to make, and that's why I've spent this much time on the review. For media consumption, they're both great. The speakers on the Samsung product just much louder and more natural than what you're going to get out of the Pro. The Pro are solid, an improvement from the first generation, but simply not as strong as the Samsung product. In terms of other things, you've got a pen holder on the side of the tablet for the Pro, magnetic with the Pogo port, which you can't use if you're actually charging the device. It also really isn't steady. On the Samsung product, you actually do have a home for the pen. It will store in there. It's aware of when it's removed. A nice feature, again, speaking to Samsung's polish, that really doesn't make up for the fact that you don't get a full-blown operating system, but these are things you should know. So web browsing, pretty much a draw on these devices, and it should be, because you shouldn't really be buying either of these just for web browsing, and that's why Samsung does put so much of that software in there, like the Handcomb Office, as well as giving you remote PC, and even content that's for business users. The New York Times and Business Week is not a pitch for someone who isn't trying to get work done, as well as at least a higher level of entertainment than the lowest common denominator delivered to them. Of course, with a computer like the Surface Pro 2, there are no limitations, and that's what I love about my Surface Pro 2. In terms of which I would personally go with, it's a tough call. I mean, I think it really comes down to vision at the end of the day, because battery life is close, and personally I can get to a power plug quickly enough that the 6.5 versus 10 hours isn't as big a compromise as it may sound like. But when it comes to the limitations of functionality, that has to do with user capability. For me, the scaling is fine. I think for a lot of people, it isn't. People who need reading glasses, this is a struggle. And just overall, users who want to multitask, even though Windows sky's the limit on multitasking with what you can do, and resizing and all of these, it's just great. Still, things are really small, as you may have noticed. And even though pinch to zoom is there, how much pinching do you want to really do? Here, you have a much more flexible system when it comes to simple things like web browsing. But again, with multitasking, this is the killer device, as long as you're cool with the screen resolution, screen size, real estate, as well as the scaling that right now, at least, Windows 8.1 represents. And in many ways, when you're in desktop mode, you are reminded you're in desktop mode. You're in regular Windows. So if the tile experience, the Metro UI, isn't doing it for you, then it's not the right option, because as a tablet, this is still where this device suffers. Yes, every day things are getting added, and it's great. It's really eventually very obvious that this is going to succeed. It already has in many ways. It's a great product. I mean, this is something I've been waiting for forever. But Samsung will continue to bring out Android-based products that are going to give feasible options for users, much like iPad owners that aren't power hungry in the same way Windows users are. And that's where this compromise becomes so compelling. So with S Note, you get great pen recognition. I didn't show anything. I'm going to attempt to show something now. OneNote is a great application on here. You can use that, and it functions well. So here I've got S Note on the left open and OneNote open on the right. And in terms of S Pen performance, as opposed to just the pen included with the Surface Pro 2, again, both Wacom digitizers, but really different. This is far more natural, no question about it. But in terms of the actual performance, for latency purposes, here we go. And just track it. I mean, I am far from an artist, and in terms of angle and in terms of the way they perform also on angles, that's something you'll notice. The S Pen was missing, at least I seem to miss some angles, whereas the pen with the Surface really not missing anything at all. But the S Pen, in terms of tablets that are, again, mobile OS driven, really a best-in-class device, no question about it. And there's really nothing else like it. There's far more friction also on the Note, and I think that's to simulate a paper experience. Here we definitely feel like we're writing on a touchscreen. So that's something that's, again, one of those niceties. Some people actually may dislike it, I don't know, but a little more feedback. But the screen real estate definitely evident, an advantage to the 12.2. And again, the screen, I think you're going to continue to see through this entire review, definitely more resilient, brighter, more robust on the 12.2 than what we have with the Microsoft offering. In terms of features, though, when it comes to using this pen with the Surface, I've already stated over and over again, it's going to destroy the limited library and capabilities of S Pen overall and what it can do beyond what Samsung bakes into the OS. But let me take us home, and I'll jump back to the desktop. And so really, to just close things out here, and ironically I wasn't able to close that tab, it comes down to what you need, as I've said many times through the video. Do you need the extra battery life? Can you live without the full operating system? And are you able to carry around this form factor? For some, the extra weight of the Surface Pro 2 is offset by the form factor. They actually like that it's a 10.6-inch device. Obviously, Microsoft's marketing research came up with that 10.6-inch being the sweet spot. Personally, I definitely would prefer it to be larger, and that's why I've said several times the Duo 13 is the best of both worlds for me. But the Duo 13 is the price of these two machines combined. So clearly, if you pick up a Duo 13, even though they're on sale now, they've been out, they, have aged a bit, you are paying for getting the best of both of these worlds in a sense, and still you're not going to get the resolution you will with the Samsung product on the left-hand side. So Android operating system limitations aside, this is a phenomenal product that I think for the average consumer, as well as many professionals that don't need more than what a mobile OS can do, as I've said 100 times in this video, it's definitely the better way to go. However, if you need the zero compromise solution, clearly Surface Pro 2 kills everything else that has ever tried to exist. I mean, the Razer Edge tablet is a nice product, but Surface Pro 2, because most users don't care about gaming, is still the superior product. It's got a Wacom digitizer. Enough said. That's a game-changing element. And again, both of these are called Pro because, well, we have Wacom, and it makes sense to call them Pro for that reason, because whether you're an artist, graphic design, architect, any sort of professional that just needs to be able to take notes, you've got Evernote here, you've got OneNote here. Both are fantastic pieces of software that, as I mentioned earlier in the video, have very similar feature sets. But at the end of the day, a computer is a computer, a tablet is a tablet, and you should be making your decision accordingly. The last thing I'll do is just a side-by-side and really show off exactly what the hardware difference looks like. Again, in terms of 10.6, bezel included and everything, you can see right there on top of the 12.2-inch display exactly how much larger that is. And if we took away the bezel, you're literally looking at almost another inch in terms of what space was taken up by the Windows bezel right there, so keep that in mind. Side by side, let me go ahead and just pick this up. And by the way, one of the really great things about the 12.2 is that there's virtually no fatigue. I mean, think about the fact that this 12.2-inch tablet weighs as much as I think, all three, or at least the first two generation iPads, and yet, you're dealing with a sub 10-inch display there. You can see a major difference. This thing is paper thin. The Surface Pro 2, very good for a tablet computer, but clearly not even approaching the thinness of the Pro 12.2. You also have an infrared remote control feature here. I didn't mention that because really that shouldn't be weighing into any pro or student that's trying to decide between these. That's certainly more of a gimmick feature aimed at home users and, well, the entire Note and high-end Galaxy lineup, as well as the mid-tier now. They include the Infrared Blaster software suite as a benefit of going with the product. But that gives you an idea. And really, they're just not comparable when it comes to form factor. And that's something that, if I didn't make that clear, it should be now. So you not only get larger screen real estate here, but that weight difference, and that is a trade-off, though, in build quality, because that does go in favor of the Surface product, both in the first and second generation. But as I mentioned, this has a display port out. You do have video out capability with the Samsung product, but not standardized like that. I believe it's all through adapters with the USB 3.0. I could be wrong. There might be. I am. Excuse me. I believe there is MHL capability there. But some things are missing from this. No NFC, no wireless charging. These are things I would have liked to have seen with all of the top tier brand new Samsung tablets, but we don't have it. And we don't have that here either. So, but both have wireless display mirrorcast capability. I forgot to mention that. So remember, but that's really not the best feature right now. Anyway, it's just more of a capability rather than really something that's very practical, in my opinion. And you may already know that from my review of the Netgear wireless display, their latest generation PTV model, the 3000. But that pretty much sums up my thoughts on this comparison. I know it ran longer than anticipated, but that's not a new thing with my channel. When things flow, I tend to continue to go, as many of you know. And I'm rhyming now, and I was not even intentionally, of course, attempting to do that. But I hope this has helped a lot of you make a decision that I know isn't easy, wasn't easy for myself included, but for me personally, the Duo 13 is really my answer. I know that's not going to help a lot of you, but hopefully everything I detailed about the differences in terms of hardware functionality, the pen experience, battery life, screen real estate, resolution, and overall build quality, and also longevity of the product in the marketplace have answered enough questions to justify whether you should be investing your money with Samsung here or, of course, with Microsoft in one of their various configurations. Again, as usual, I should say, any questions or comments, please feel free to post them. And, of course, as usual, please feel free to subscribe. Later.